Hello, amazing people. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Len Cook with the Maverick Mind. Before you click off, just give me 2 or 3 minutes to see if this might actually interest you. And it might even change the way you perceive things forever. I know this is going to sound a little flaky. Have you ever really looked at a snowflake up close? I mean, really looked. The intricate patterns, the delicate structure, the way it catches the light. There's something truly magical about them. And just like most snowflakes, each of us brings something unique to the world. Our talents, our perspectives, our individual journeys. We've been taught from childhood that we're special. In many ways, we absolutely are. But what if there's an even deeper truth about ourselves waiting to be discovered right in front of us, but we just can't see it? What if our uniqueness is just the beginning of a much more fascinating story? So I'm glad you're here today. I'm taking you on a journey, one of curiosity and self-discovery. I'll share 10 thought-provoking ideas that have helped me see myself and others in a whole new light. Not to diminish our individuality, but to possibly find an even more profound connection with the world and the universe around us. But before we dive deep into who we are, I want to talk about how we experience reality and what we know. Because the truth is staggering. We're missing more than 99% of what's actually out there. Consider this. The electromagnetic spectrum, which is all forms of light, ranging from radio waves, which are thousands of kilometers long, to gamma rays smaller than the nucleus of an atom. And what can humans see? A band so narrow, it's almost comical. Wavelengths from about 380 to 700 nanometers. That's like having access to only one key on a piano that stretches around the entire planet. The same thing also applies to sound. We can only hear a very narrow band of sound waves, while dogs and other animals can hear sounds that we couldn't even imagine. So we're not just missing most of reality, we're surrounded by creatures experiencing completely different versions of the same world. Bees see ultraviolet patterns on flowers invisible to us. Mantis shrimp have 16 different color receptors, while we only have 3. Just imagine how beautiful and how amazing things would be if we could see not just millions, but billions and billions of different types of colors. Some birds can actually see the Earth's magnetic field. It's like we're locked in one tiny room of an enormous mansion and confidently drawing floor plans of the whole place. Yep, I definitely got the whole universe figured out from this tiny little corner here. And here's something even more mind-bending. Even the tiny fraction of reality we do detect isn't experienced directly. For example, color isn't actually out there. It's not a thing in the world. We don't see a red apple. You're not seeing redness. You're seeing wavelengths being absorbed and reflected, which your visual cortex interprets as the color of red. There is no physical thing that is red. We also have a tendency to think that we see the world like a camera, but we don't. Different parts of your brain process motion, other parts color, other parts faces, and other parts objects, all separately and then stitched together into what feels like a seamless experience. We're not seeing reality. We're running an incredibly sophisticated simulation inside our own head. It's essentially a hallucination that we create instantaneously. This isn't just some abstract philosophy. Our perception system has to take shortcuts to make sense of overwhelming input, which is why optical illusions work, how magicians do what they do. Your brain isn't showing you what's there. It's showing you what it thinks is probably there based on past experience. I'm not sharing this to make us feel inadequate. I want to inspire profound wonder and humility. Just imagine what might exist all around you right now that we just can't detect and comprehend. How much of reality are we missing simply because we lack the sensory equipment to perceive it? And even the parts that we can perceive are so limited to almost be laughable. But here's where it even gets more fascinating. Of the pitiful 1% of reality our senses do detect, our brains filter out about 99.999% of the information before it even reaches our consciousness. Neuroscientists estimate that your senses send your brain about 11 million bits of information every second. But your conscious mind can only process about 40 to 50 bits per second. That's not a typo. We're talking about a filtration system so extreme, it would be like trying to drink from a fire hose through a coffee stirrer. But ironically, the fire hose, compared to the information that exists, is like Niagara Falls. So imagine our true perception of reality that we base everything on our entire world around is like Niagara Falls, and we have a coffee stirrer. of information, and yet we assume we understand everything. Clearly we don't. So what else is out there? And that's what I cannot help but find fascinating, as to what is the true nature of our reality that is clearly well beyond anything we can comprehend. Now, this filtration isn't a bug, it's a feature. If you were conscious of every sensory input hitting your system right now, you'd be paralyzed with information overload. The sound of your clothing rubbing against your skin, the feel of your tongue in your mouth, the thousands of tiny movements in your peripheral vision. Even more remarkably, what makes it through the filter isn't decided objectively. Your expectations, beliefs, fears, desires, and past experiences all act as gatekeepers, letting in what aligns with your existing worldview and often blocking what doesn't. Many of us are familiar with the concept of confirmation bias, but that is such a small thing compared to what's really going on. Now, this is why eyewitness testimony is so unreliable in court. Two people can witness the exact same event and literally perceive two completely different realities. Not just interpret them differently, actually see and hear things differently. I miss gorgeous sunsets because I'm worrying about tomorrow's meeting. I don't notice kind smiles because I'm expecting criticism. I walk past extraordinary beauty because I'm lost in thoughts about the past or the future. We create our reality through what we allow ourselves to notice. Now, your emotional state dramatically affects what you perceive. When you're anxious, your brain literally prioritizes potential threats in your visual field. When you're in love, you notice beauty more readily. In a very real sense, two people with different emotional states are living in different perceptual worlds. The astonishing thing is that once you become aware of these filters, you can begin to adjust and tweak them. Like cleaning a window you didn't even notice and realize was dirty. Suddenly now you can see much more of what was always there. Now that we've established our perception is both limited and filtered, let's get into the good stuff. If I take a teaspoon of water from an ocean, is that teaspoon still ocean water? Most of us would say yes. Of course, it contains the same amount of salt, the same minerals, the same essence as the ocean it came from. But what if this teaspoon of water suddenly developed a consciousness and started calling itself Steve? What if Steve began insisting he was entirely different from the ocean? I am Steve, unique teaspoon water with special teaspoon water dreams and teaspoon water problems. Poor Steve might spend his entire existence trying to be the best teaspoon of water he could be. I'm sparklier than the other teaspoon. Do I have the right mineral balance? Why doesn't everyone recognize how special of a teaspoon of water I am? But no matter how much Steve insists on his separate identity, he's still fundamentally ocean water. His separateness is, well, an illusion created by the boundaries of the teaspoon. Now, of course, I'm not saying you're exactly like Steve the teaspoon. I mean, he is a special little teaspoon, let's be real. But when you feel completely separate from everything and everyone else, special, unique, isolated in your own little container, are you seeing the whole picture as it really is? Now, reflect. Remember a time when you felt deeply connected to something larger than yourself. Perhaps a moment in nature, when you're in love, in creative flow, or in a moment of collective joy. How does that feeling compare to your normal sense of being a separate self? Now let's push this separate self idea a little bit further with a thought experiment. Imagine if I wasn't born where and when I was. What if instead of my current life, I was born in a completely different time, different place, a different culture, a different family, different era, different everything? Think about something specific like your taste in music, your political views, or your life goals. How much of that is inherently you, and how much of it was shaped by the container that you're in and the experiences that you've had? What if I was born in medieval Japan, Renaissance Italy, or during the height of the Mayan civilization? Would the me that I feel so attached to right now still exist in any recognizable form? Now, this isn't about denying your uniqueness. The particular way your nature combines with your nurture creates something that has never existed before. But recognizing how much of my identity comes from circumstances helps me see our common humanity. For example, the next time you see someone whose life looks nothing like yours, Remember, in different circumstances, you might have been them. They might have been you, not metaphorically, but literally. It's really the foundation of most judgment. Oh, I would never do that. But there's a logical problem with this thinking, because if truly I was that other person with all their memories, desires, fears, traumas, experiences, love, genetic makeup, and everything else that shapes who and what they are and how they see the world, I wouldn't do anything differently. I would do exactly what they did, because I wouldn't be me in their situation. I'd be them, with their brain, their history, their emotional triggers, their blind spots, their everything. Think about a decision you regret in your own life. At the time, with the information that you had, emotions and pressures, that choice made perfect sense to you. We all act accordingly to our internal logic at any given moment. Now, of course, this isn't about excusing harmful behavior. It's about recognizing that judging others based on what I think I would do in their shoes is often based on a fundamental misunderstanding. So try this. When you find yourself harshly judging someone's choices, pause and consider the full context of their life that led to that moment. Not as an intellectual exercise, but as a practice of genuine compassion. Let's talk about trees for a moment, not as background scenery, but as fellow living beings that with something profound to teach us. I want you to consider this oak tree. Do you think it feels special? Does it worry that its branches aren't as Instagram worthy as the pine tree next door? Does it have existential crisis about whether it's fulfilling its tree potential? Does this solitary tree on a cliff feel sorry for itself because life is hard? Why me? Why am I the only tree that has to deal with these harsh winds and those forest trees have it so easy? Meanwhile, the trees in the dense forest are looking at that lone tree thinking, wow, that tree is lucky. No competition for sunlight, no cramped root space. It can feel the breeze from all directions. Some trees have all the luck. Trees don't waste energy contemplating their uniqueness or specialness. Trees are just being trees, fully expressing what they are, responding to their environment, growing where planted and making the best of the situation that they have. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting humans should be exactly like trees. Our self-awareness is a gift. But there might be wisdom in sometimes setting aside our constant self-evaluation and just simply being. And I think there's a lot to learn from the other things, the living creatures around us. So next time you're among the trees, try this. Let go of your narrative about yourself for just a few minutes. Not forever, just temporarily. Notice what it feels like to simply be present, without the need to be special or different or better. Now let's get into the heart of things. Who am I really? If I asked you to describe yourself, you might mention your name, your job, your relationships, interests, beliefs, and personality traits. All perfectly valid. But here's the key question, perhaps the question. If you stripped all of that away, what would remain? And wouldn't that be the real you? Who are you when all the labels and roles and memories, beliefs, and identifications are removed? Not as a thought experiment, but as the most essential existential question. What is the nature of your core being before and after all constructs? Now, those who practice deep meditation often report experiencing a sense of identity that exists prior to all these constructs. A pure awareness that observes thoughts, emotions, and sensations without being defined by them. You may have experienced this yourself during moments of flow, when you're so absorbed in an activity that your sense of a separate self temporarily dissolves. Those moments often feel deeply authentic, even as our usual self definitions fade away. Think about who you were 10 years ago. You had different interests, perhaps, different beliefs, maybe you had different values. Yet there's a continuous thread of you-ness running through all those changes. What is that thread? Now, of course, this does not mean you should abandon your identity. These constructs help us function in the world, but recognizing them as constructs rather than fixed realities can be incredibly liberating. Now, here's a fascinating thought experiment. Imagine a person born with no senses, no sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, no way to receive input from the outside world. Would this person develop a sense of self? without experiences to form memories, without language to shape thoughts, without others to compare themselves to, would they still feel like a distinct individual? How would they perceive reality and themselves in existence? They'd be alive, just like you and me. Now imagine two such individuals. Would they develop differently? If so, what would make them different from each other? If not, what does that suggest about the nature of our core identity? Now, this isn't just some abstract philosophy. People who use sensory deprivation tanks often report that their sense of separate self temporarily dissolves when external stimuli are removed. It relates to how we develop our sense of self from infancy. Through interaction with our environment and other people, our identity emerges through relationships, like waves emerging from the ocean. Our culture is obsessed with specialness. To stand out, be extraordinary, leave your mark, find your unique purpose. This constant pressure can be exhausting. Now, here's a provocative statement from many wisdom traditions. If you feel special in any way, you're not awakened. I know, harsh, but stay with me on this. This isn't about diminishing your genuine uniqueness. It's about recognizing how the pursuit of specialness often creates suffering, anxiety, comparison, disappointment, isolation. What if I found value not in being better than others, but in being exactly who I am and contributing what comes natural to me? Like how each instrument in an orchestra is necessary, not special. Combined is when they make the magic. Paradoxically, when I let go of my desperate need to be special, I might recognize something truly extraordinary, the miracle of existence itself, which I share with every other being. So try this shift. Instead of asking, how am I special? Try asking, how am I connected? Or how can I contribute? Notice how different that feels in your body and mind? Think about it. Now let's come full circle to our snowflake metaphor. Here's a fun fact. The idea that two snowflakes are alike isn't entirely accurate. Simpler snowflakes can indeed be identical, especially when formed under similar conditions. But here's the more important question. Does a snowflake worry about whether it's unique? Does it compare itself to other snowflakes? Oh no, I look just like that other snowflake over there. My life has no meaning. Of course not. The snowflake simply expresses its nature fully, becoming exactly what it is in response to its environment, without anxiety, without comparing, without needing to stand out. Throughout this journey, I've explored how much of our identity is constructed, filtered, and influenced by circumstances beyond our control. Not to diminish your individuality, but to place it in a larger context. In so many ways, there's wisdom in the thought that you can see more of reality with your eyes closed than with them open. Perhaps true freedom doesn't come from proving my specialness, but from embracing both my uniqueness and my fundamental connection to everything. What might become possible when we live from this understanding? There are many spiritual traditions that speak of exactly what I'm talking about in many different words, in many different ways. Nothing I've said is new, but maybe how I've said it is in a way that might resonate with you a little differently and a little more deeply. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I'd love to hear which of these ideas resonated the most with you, or what questions they raised. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's continue this exploration together. Thank you.